Welcome everybody. Thanks for joining us today. My name's Lucy Dillon and I'm here at 21st Yoga in Salt Lake City. I'm happy to be teaching another Yin Yoga class today, so thank you for being with me. This practice today will focus on the spine, a little more on the shoulders and on the hips. So I hope that sounds good to you, and we'll start just by sort of collecting our thoughts, kind of arriving on our mat wherever you are doing that. And one thing I want to mention as we get started is if you have a playlist that you love and you'd like to turn that on now, know that you have time to do that. Go ahead and just take a minute to turn on music, maybe on a different format or on a different device or something. It's just nice. My voice will carry you through the practice, but you can also have that music on, which is nice for you. So take a minute to do that if you'd like. When you feel like it, just settle yourself on something that's lifted a little bit. We'll be kind of using all directions of our mat today. So you will need something that lifts the hips a little bit or provides a little bit of support for you. In the studio setting, we have these bolsters, but you can use a couch cushion. You can use kind of a thicker pillow that has some substance to it, anything like that. So also, I'd love for you to have a couple of blocks if you have them at home. If not, maybe a couple of books or anything. You can also use your bolster when we come to the part where we're going to use 2 blocks. But just that little height is nice. So when you feel like it, just close your eyes if you would, please. We're going to start seated and just kind of arriving on your mat. So do feel free just to let the eyes close and relax the face and the gaze. And do start to bring your full devoted attention to your breath. So that might seem kind of obvious that if the eyes are closed and you're breathing nicely, that you're focused on the breath, but the mind is a amazing and magical thing, and it can be a little bit of a vixen sometimes. Lots of chatter going on, lots of input. So take a moment now to see if you can feel where your inhale first touches the inside of your body. So that's a strange request, I know. But see if you can imagine the breath being called into the body, and notice where you can first feel that little touch of the air entering your body. Maybe it's at the very edge of the nostril. Maybe it's sort of at the top of the head or at the back side of the throat. And see if you can visualize the breath being its own separate and unique entity, its own essence coming into your body. Let yourself feel the way that the breath expands, and then really giving the breath a look. And what I mean by that is, how in the mind's eye does the breath seem to you? Is it colorful? Is it translucent or clear and white and healing? Taking note also of the texture of the breath. Does it feel wispy or silky, or does it feel rich and thick, almost liquid? Taking several more breaths here, keeping that attention on the inhale, gently bring the hands to the lower abdomen. Open up the palms so that you can feel the palms against your body. And as you breathe deeply now, see the breath coming into the lungs, the full lobes of the lungs, even the very bottom corners. And with that deep breath, let the belly expand out and into your hands. We'll take several more breaths here, but just allow yourself to feel the connection between this sort of idea that we feel, that we notice around the head, the inhalation coming in through the nose, and how all of that system of the body is connected all of the way down to this low area of the belly, down and into the hands. And just let that be your first introduction to creating space in this amazing system of our body that the Yin Yoga practice identifies, and that is the connective tissue system. So take about 3 more full breaths. Feeling that stocking of fascia, of connective tissue that is the glue that holds the entire body together. Feeling it take its first little expanded steps, its first little expanded breaths. And gently, gently releasing the hands. Take a moment here to open the eyes. And then just moving the torso in an easy and gentle circle. So as you move the torso around, really continuing to lubricate your body with the breath, that long inhalation. And then reversing the direction, taking a couple of big sweeping circles that way. Noticing the connection again between the hips, the spine, the ribs, all of the way up to the shoulders. And as you feel ready, coming back to the center, and we'll begin to make our way into our first pose of the morning. So roll over onto one knee, and we'll face the top of your mat, whatever that is for you in your setup, in your space. We're going to move into child's pose. So if you know that you have some sensitivity to your knees, you can place the blanket down so that you've got some padding there. We'll move the blocks out of the way for now. And then because we're practicing in the Yin style, If you'd like to use your bolster or that pillow or couch cushion, whatever you've got out in front of you, be my guest. So as you feel like it, widen the knees. And if you're using a pillow or anything here, you can draw the bolster between the knees, kind of framing the bolster or your support with the knees. I like to just touch my big toes together. That gives a little bit of balance to my body left to right. It kind of brings the hemispheres of my body together. So as you feel like it, start to lower your body down here. Now, for purposes of our practice today, it may be that you use the bolster, and it also may be that you just place the bolster aside and just stretch fully out and into that child's pose. So take a moment to organize your body so that it feels balanced, and then dropping yourself down. So a lot of times for me, it feels good to kind of move around a little bit to kind of find the perfect arrangement for my body. So just take a moment to do that. And for the moment, go ahead and stretch your arms out long in front of you so you can feel the way that you get that nice length all the way out to the fingertips. Once you're out in that child's pose, just stay for a moment and then play with the notion of just putting you back up on top here. Play with the notion of stretching forward, and you can feel that activeness to the stretch. And so you know the difference between that kind of active reaching type of stretch, and then practice that versus kind of a softening, a release of the shoulders entirely. So that's kind of an odd experiment to do. And you've got time here in this first pose to play with that. So again, a nice active reaching. And then softening the shoulders, kind of letting the elbows bend and just letting the arms and the shoulders be heavy. So just experiment with that just a little bit, kind of feeling the difference between those two things. And this again becomes the first visit that we have to this softening in the shoulders, this very deliberate releasing of the power, the responsibility of the shoulders. So just experiment with that, the letting go. Feeling the heaviness in the hips. So there's this little bit of a drawing down of the tailbone, a heaviness to the hip area, a little bit of a feeling of moving the hips back. And always for me in this pose, I'm kind of resetting and resetting the pose because the spine actually gets longer as we do that. So just experimenting with that. Take several more breaths here. And as you feel ready, very gently start to walk your hands back up. Pause here at the top of the posture for a moment, and then back the knees up just a little bit. Widen the hands and let the hips just drop down into whatever sort of way feels good to you. So again, we've come into this interlude between the held yin poses. And so you want to let the body kind of come back to something that's familiar. So alternating that heart opening position with stretching back and into child's pose. And then just traveling the hips forward. So we just take time doing this. This may look like something that resembles something from your yoga practice. It may not. It may just be a heaviness of the hips. I'm just giving you a little different view of this. So, depending on how your spine feels, it may be that it feels better to you to only come up a little bit, or your spine may feel good to just lift up a little more deliberately. You can turn the face to one side and then the other. And alternating that open position with a return for a moment to child's pose. Continue that rocking forward and rocking back. And you'll notice that that gives the legs a little bit of time to straighten, the knees a little different experience. So take one more like that. Kind of moving into and out of the pose. And as you feel ready, come back, rest your body weight back on your heels, and just pause here for a moment. So this next posture will take a little bit of attention to your feet, to your ankles, to your lower legs. So start just by seeing how it feels just to rest back like this on the heels. If you need a little bit of support, know that you can use your bolster between the hips and the heels. And that's sometimes nice. You can tuck anything there, actually. So that just makes the angle of the hip and the ankle a little bit more gracious. So just pausing here for a moment. Take the hands behind the back, interlace the fingers, and just stretch and open the heart in kind of a luxurious manner. So you can just sort of see how the body feels today. If that's too hard to get the fingers interlaced, you're welcome to grab anything that you have around your space, like your sweatshirt or any kind of just little item that gives you just a little bit of space. You can then take the hands away from each other, and that creates a little more breadth through the chest. So just in case. Slowly releasing the arms as you're ready. And then rock your weight forward, and this is the fun part. Turn your toes under and spread the toes against your mat or your carpet or whatever you're practicing on. So I have my puffy pants on. I'm actually going to reach down and manually spread the toes out. So the very unusual posture, it's not a crowd favorite typically. So just know the bottoms of the feet have this huge expanse, tons of nerve endings, lots of planes and fields of different sort of tissue. So as you're doing this, you may really feel a lot of sensation. That's on purpose. So great for the feet as we're doing our hiking and biking, really any kind of sports that we're doing, any kind of outdoor activities. So as you're here, and I'm just going to shift my focus just for a second to the front, toes are still spreading. See if you can press the weight down into the ball of the big toe. So as you do that, let the knees slide forward just a tiny bit. Now, a millimeter is going to be enough probably. Some of you will slide the knees forward enough that I could see that movement, but most of you will do just the very tiniest, most minute little effort with the movement forward, and you'll feel a lot in the bottoms of the feet. So knowing what we do about our feet, they're in shoes, they're compressed a lot of the time. So we really want to open up those big fields of the bottom of the feet. So take some deep breaths. We don't stay in this pose as long as we do some others. So just breathing here, taking a few more breaths, and then we'll rock our weight forward, turn the toes the opposite way. So now my feet are planted flat along the floor, and I'm just going to sit back on the heels once again. So from here, just notice how your feet feel. They'll be tingling, there'll be a lot of action in the feet. You'll feel maybe some warmth. So just staying here, taking some breaths. And then if you feel like it, know that we're going to be on the heels for a moment without the toe aspect of this. So bring your bolster or maybe your blocks in between the hips and the heels and just pause for a second. Let the shoulders relax. So oftentimes when we go into those deep poses with the feet where there's a ton of this kind of booming sensation, sometimes our bodies react by sort of hunching up and grabbing here for control or for support. So just letting the shoulders go, taking some breaths. And then from here, we're going to move our arms behind the body in a reverse version of this position. So the hands are together in this Anjali Mudra. It's a sacred hand posture, but we're going to move this behind the back. So if you're familiar with that, go ahead and do it. Otherwise, I'll show you that you can have quite a variety of options here. One version is just to move the hands behind the back and kind of wiggle them into place. Another version is to point the fingers down. And still another version is to hold on to the forearms like so. So all of those versions are really actually quite different in the way that they translate to your body. So spend a moment just sort of noticing what's appropriate for you and what feels most beneficial. Bring the hands back, close your eyes, and start to rededicate yourself to the breath. So the heels of the hands do not have to be together. And what I love about this pose is how apparent it becomes, how connected everything is from the skull all of the way up here at the skull, at the neck, and down through the body, along the spine to the hips. So this pose really occurs, in my mind, from the inside out. If you take a deep breath, you can feel that entire landscape of the inner body opening. Soften the shoulders. And as you're in this pose, see if you can imagine the inhale now coming in through the top of the head, pouring the breath into your body. So in the mind's eye, maybe you see it coming down the spine, and radiating out through the lungs, through the ribs, out through the sides of the body. And all the while, we're softening at the shoulders. So because our shoulders are so powerful and because we ask so much of them always, there will be this tendency to kind of have the shoulders kind of up in the ears. And that's a protective mechanism for us. So while you're sitting here for these last several breaths, releasing, seeing if you can allow the shoulders to fall away from the ears. And maybe there's the tiniest bit of opening the wings, opening the arms and the elbows a little bit. You can decide about that. But the deep breaths are usually enough. So take one more breath like that. And gently releasing the arms, take a moment and just feeling that difference between where the arms have been and where they are now. We're going to transition into the next pose quite directly. So simply rock your weight forward, turn your toes over again, and then we're going to walk ourselves into a really gentle standing forward fold. So as you're doing this, bend the knees a lot. So I'll show you the side view here. As you can see, I'm really not trying to go crazy in this pose. Meaning my knees are quite bent. The head is going to hang heavily. Let the full weight of the head go. And so from this pose, you can see that it's wonderful for the knees. The knees have been bent. That joint has been compressed on purpose. And so now we're able to flood the knee joint with oxygen, circulation. So pause here for a moment. Imagine, if you would, that the head is this very heavy counterweight to the spine. So we really want to let the head release. The neck is free. In this pose, which is different than in some postures, do let yourself move around a little bit. So sometimes I'm bending my knees more. Sometimes I'm shifting one leg, bending one knee and then the other. Take some deep breaths and feel the entire superficial back line of the body releasing. So the head becomes the last piece of that release. So quite obviously you can feel the hamstrings, the calves, the spine. And then if you'd like a little additional attention to the shoulders, slowly fold the arms, interlace the arms, and let the full weight of the shoulder carriage release. Now still, the knees are bent, and I like to keep my knees bent significantly through most of this. There's a little bit of movement side to side. And then really practicing that letting go of the weight of the arms. In other words, the shoulders will necessarily sort of try to lift you up. The back will try to work a little bit. So we're going to see if we can let go of that entirely. Let yourself sway a little bit and take several more breaths here. You can experiment also letting your body lean forward just a little bit or lean back just a little bit. As you feel ready, slowly bring the hands to the floor. Spend your last couple of breaths with the hands, and maybe the hands are on the shins or on top of something that you have close by. Changing the nature of that length through the back of the body. And then slowly, instead of rolling up, very gently bend the knees a lot and come down toward the floor instead. So from here, you can move and stretch in any way that you choose. So maybe it feels good to take a twist of some sort. Maybe something else feels good to you, maybe a just nice reach. Take another couple of breaths. And then one last time, and not for very long, we're going to tuck the toes back under and address the soles of the feet once more. So notice how your body feels about doing that. Again, I like to bring my heels together pretty close, not quite touching, but close. And then again, I do manually spread my toes with my fingers. So just making sure that the toes have a ton of room as they're going into this posture. And then do let the knees slide forward to whatever degree you'd like. The interesting thing about this posture is you'll feel the weight trying to shift to the outer edge of the feet. You do want to see if you can feel the breadth of your weight distributed across the ball of your foot. So that's a little strange, but you can experiment with that. Take some deep breaths. Close the eyes for a few breaths. And just about 3 more full inhales. As you feel ready and complete, very gently come out of that pose, lean your body forward, press the tops of your feet into contact with the floor, and just relax for a moment. Wonderful. So go ahead and let your body move in any way that you'd like. The next posture that we're going to try involves something called frog pose. This, again, sometimes not a crowd favorite. However, there's a lot of ways to make it so that it's more accessible to your body. So if you have something soft, like a blanket or even small pillows or something, bring that blanket across your mat. And you want it a little bit wider than the width of your yoga mat or your space. If you have something to lift your chest up, bring that close by. We're going to move the knees out wide, and the feet are going to move out just as wide as the knees. So the part about this that is really perplexing is that you've got this very strong, amazing ligament at the inner leg. And it's one of the very strongest. It's also one of the tightest. So start to make your way toward that pose, and I'll give you some instructions if you don't know this pose. But what we really want to do with ligaments is we're not really stretching them. We're simply giving them a little bit of space. And so as we set up into this pose, we want to think about the same concept that we would if we were thinking about braces moving our teeth. We want to provide just a little bit of traction, a little bit of tension, and then we want to hold that posture so that we have just that little bit of time and tension to just create a tiny bit of space there. So I'll shift my perspective here just for a moment. The padding from the blanket is really for the inner knees. So you're already getting nice and set up there. We do want to have the heels away from each other. And as you can see, my foot is flexed. Both feet are flexed, actually. And I'm bringing myself forward, kind of experimenting as I come down to see where the hip line is most where the pose is most beneficial for that inner ligament. We do use the bolster in this practice because we want to come down and be able to sustain that pose. So as you come down, know that it might be that you need to build up your support by adding a little block or whatever you've got at the house underneath your bolster or your couch cushion. So go ahead and get that into place and then settle. And that settling part is the rub, right? So the knees may scooch out a little bit. They may slide away from you just a little bit. There's usually an incredible amount of sensation in this inner line of the hip. So know that that's going to occur. Take your attention back to the breath, close the eyes, and experimenting with just staying. And if you're not feeling enough, you can lower the bolster down or take it away entirely. Double check too while you're in this pose that the heels are not close together, rather that they're out wide. We do want to have this, what would look like a right angle to the hip-knee line and then the knee-ankle line. So deepen the breath. Staying in the posture for several more breaths. What I notice about myself in this pose is there may be a feeling of kind of lifting yourself out of the posture. See if you can let the weight of the hips be heavy. See if you can let the full gravity really come into the hips and draw you toward the ground. And I appreciate that that's a really big ask of your body. So with every exhalation, there's that opportunity of letting go, of releasing. And just take about 3 more breaths here. Check in with the spine and the shoulders. Slowly, slowly, as you feel ready, bring the hands to the mat, curl the heels in so that you can lift the knees and draw them together and sit back and out of that pose. Take a moment here to move the props and then move and stretch in any way that you like. So keep the eyes closed and just dedicate yourself to that moving in any way that feels good to your body. And that really can be anything, whether it's just a nice kind of recreational stretch that you know your body loves, or something more formal from your yoga practice. Just taking your time. Take a few more breaths in that interlude here. I'm going to show this next pose in a couple of different ways. So you can either use your blocks end to end like so, or you can use anything that's lifted that you're using for your support. So couch cushion, pillows, whatever you have. The other thing that you could use if you're at your house and you have time to move there is a stair. The next posture is this wonderful opening for the chest. And we do that by supporting ourselves very deliberately at the area of the shoulder blades at the back body. So I'll show you this in a couple of different ways. If you already know this pose, go ahead and make your way toward it. But essentially, we place the blocks somewhere on the ground, and then we're going to place the shoulder blades directly on the blocks. So it's very different than having the shoulder blades, the blocks supporting the shoulders way up here. We're going to actually scooch our way around so that we come down onto the blocks or the bolster with the shoulder blades. Now, the other important part of this pose is the placement of the hands. So interlace the hands, bring the hands underneath the back of the head, and then lay the weight of the head down in the hands. So the full weight of the head is cradled in the hands. The shoulder blades are supported by that block or the bolster, and then let the head drop back. Now, we do want to keep the neck long here, so if you know that you're pretty tight in the neck and the upper back, sometimes it's nice to place a blanket underneath the head, the area where the head will be. And that just gives your head a little pillow. So I'll show you what that looks like. And the setup for this is quite deliberate. Shoulder blades are anchored into the body. The elbows relax entirely then. And you have some choices about what to do with your legs. So if your low back feels a little bit tender, I would just keep my feet exactly where they are, soles of the feet on the ground, knees pointed up. You can walk your feet away from each other just a little bit and let the knees rest in. That's a really nice way to go. Some of you will feel okay extending the legs out. And it may feel okay for some of you to bring the soles of the feet together and let the knees open into Baddha Konasana. So wherever you are, deepen the breath and seeing if you can let the weight of the head entirely rest in the palms of the hands. It's a wonderful posture for the chest just to open in a gentle way. It's a big pose for sure. Let the elbows release. Continue those deep breaths into the chest. placing our body weight on the blocks like this really gives the middle of the back a complete release. It won't feel like that because the middle back is so used to working double time, kind of holding on for dear life. So take a few more breaths here. Let the elbows release and open toward the sides of the body. Probably one side will feel much more receptive to this stretch than the other. That's normal. And then as you feel ready to come out of the pose, we do that very deliberately as well. So reinforce your position of your hands underneath your head. Pick up the head just a little bit and draw the elbows in toward the head, in toward the face. Then we'll lay the knees off toward the right. Roll toward the right just a little bit so that you can have a little bit of support from your arm on the ground, and then just move the support, the blocks, what have you, out of the way and make your way onto your back. So take a moment just to move your toys around. We've got lots of toys that we're using today. Take a moment here to move the legs in any way you'd like. Maybe drawing a knee into the chest and stretching out through that opposite leg. Switching sides if you're using that strategy. You're also welcome to bring the knees up toward the ceiling, just sort of rocking the knees back and forth. And then as you feel ready, gently bring the soles of the feet together, let the knees open toward the sides of the room, and just relax the arms. I'll give you a couple of options for the arms in a moment, but let the weight of the legs release. You do have the blocks, so if it feels better to you to support that release of the legs by letting the knees come down onto a block, that's a really nice way to go. Again, the goal of this practice is that letting go, that releasing. So if you find that your knees are sort of tucked up and kind of electrified or not able to let go, it's really nice to add the support of the blocks. And then bring the arms into an easy goalpost position. So in that goalpost position, you're on the ground, but the arms are just like so. So the chest is open. The arms may kind of start with the hands in a little bit. If you can open those up a little, it's just a really nice, spacious, supported way to be with the chest. So give that a try. And again, there's the notion of just softening. See if you can make the shoulders heavier. You can imagine just letting any tension or stiffness or rigidity melt away from the shoulders. Let the jaws relax, the face relax. Slowly move the arms so they come down to the sides of the body once again. We're going to draw the knees back to the midline, so if you need a little support from the hands to help the knees back together, that's great to do. Moving the knees side to side maybe, take your time. And eventually extending the legs out and into final relaxation. So know that on your way there, feel free to take any sort of movement that feels right to you. Maybe a little twist, maybe some other movement that's your favorite thing. Stay with that nice full breath. And then do allow your body just to release down. Feel free to cover yourself with a blanket. Feel free to bring any of your props across your body to give you a little bit of extra grounding, a little bit of extra weight. Do let the face relax. The jaws relax. And just appreciating that relearning how to set down the weight of responsibility that rests in the shoulders, in the upper back, in the spine. Take a few more deep breaths. keep in mind that if you are able to stay in this final pose for longer, that's wonderful to give yourself that gift. So feel free to just stay where you are. If you'd like to begin moving and stretching, be my guest. Take your time making your way over onto one side. And just pause on your side for a moment. Kind of reacclimating to the space around you. And slowly, as you feel ready, use the hands, press yourself up towards seated, but just take your time, everybody. Keeping the eyes closed for a moment, take a few deep breaths. And once again, just seeing if you can remember this state of release through the shoulders, through the neck, the spine, all the way down and into the hips. Every exhalation that we take through our day allows us that opportunity, that letting go. And then bringing the hands to the heart, releasing the shoulders once again. And just taking another breath or two. Wonderful. Thank you so much for being in this practice, for the courage and the bravery that it takes to stay in these poses with our breath, with our feeling, with what's going on in our bodies. So very little distraction with this practice. So thank you for your courage. Wonderful, everyone. Take one more breath together. Ending the practice with that phrase, namaste, which is loosely translated as all that is wonderful and divine in me honors all that is wonderful and divine in you. So thank you so much for being here today, everybody. Namaste.